With that, we will begin. Hello again. Thank you for joining and welcome to today's event, the raid on the Educational Bookshop with the Green Olive Collective and the Educational Bookshop. My name is Erez Bleicher, and I'm the Advocacy and Membership Director of the Green Olive Collective, a tour guiding, advocacy, and human rights center committed to a democratic future and an end to the ongoing displacement of Palestinians. We provide communities around the world with insight into the apartheid policies of the occupation and the resources to engage in meaningful advocacy in solidarity with Palestinians. Your contributions for today's event will be split between the Green Olive Collective and the Educational Bookshop to help cover legal fees and restock books that were damaged during the police raid. Please contribute to the Green Olive Fund at the link I just put into the chat to support both of our urgent work challenging censorship, occupation, and escalating political repression. As discussed with Ahmed prior to this event, half of your contributions will go to sustain agricultural projects in Area C of the West Bank in Palestinian communities facing unprecedented state violence, settler attacks, and land expropriation, and half will be given in mutual aid and solidarity with the bookshop following recent police repression. As all of you are aware, last month, occupation forces raided the Educational Bookshop in Jerusalem, confiscated and damaged hundreds of books, and arrested booksellers Mahmoud and Ahmad Muna. The police raid follows the large-scale destruction of Palestinian cultural infrastructure in Gaza, the censorship of the Al-Saraya Theater before a screening of the speculative documentary Lead in Jaffa this October, and a larger history of looting and confiscation of Palestinian books stretching back to the 70,000 seized from homes during the 1948 Nakba and wrongly held today under the custody of the National Library of Israel as, quote, abandoned property. Ahmad Muna is one of the owners of the Educational Bookshop, which has functioned since 1984 as a cultural, political, and literary center in Jerusalem. The bookshop presents a wide variety of Palestinian scholarly titles and frequently hosts workshops, lectures, and educational events. Ahmed will speak with us today about the recent raid on the bookshop, his arrest alongside Mahmoud, and the broader context of cultural repression today. Ahmed, your time is really sincerely and endlessly appreciated here, and we're really honored to have you. The last thing I'll say before we begin our conversation is that as we move forward, everyone should feel please free to send questions in the chat. Just be sure to begin your comments with the word question followed by a dash or colon so I know to look for it and identify it. And hopefully I'll be able to integrate your questions into the Q&A at the end of our time here today. With that, Ahmad, I'll start by asking you as a first question to please introduce yourself and share with us more about the history of the Educational Bookshop. When did your family found the bookshop and why? How has your personal relationship to the bookshop developed over the years? And anything else you wish to begin with. You should be able to unmute.
I think I unmuted myself, yes. I actually want to start by saying hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I want to thank you, Erez and Green Olive Tours, for organizing this and for taking the time to listen from me and the Educational Bookshop. I see over 140 people here in this room, and really it's not to be taken for granted that actually people do come and want to listen and are interested in this. So I want to thank everybody who made the time to come here this Sunday and to listen. Really, thank you so much. I'm sitting in my home in Jerusalem now. My name again is Ahmad Muna. I'll introduce myself. Born and raised in Jerusalem. I'm 34 years old. I'm a Palestinian, and I'm from the Muna family that runs the Educational Bookshop. The bookshop started in 1984, 40 years ago, and we have existed since with one branch, and then we've expanded into a second branch. We started by selling Arabic books and stationery in 1993 following the Oslo Accords and the large amount of people who came back to Palestine to work, to to help building infrastructure, to basically, after the first Courtney, people and internationals came to help develop and rebuild the Palestinian state. These are people who worked in NGOs, diplomats, journalists. So these started to and English literature. Then that kind of prompted us to start to import English books. And since then, we have also expanded and opened our second branch, which is an English bookshop with a coffee shop, as it has been posted on one of the photos I see in the chat. The bookshop is now where I work, is the flagship location on Salahuddin Street. I spend most of my days there. We have today books that basically cover Israel. This is our niche. This is what we sell. We sell books that are related to Israel-Palestine in specific and more about Middle East in general. We have over 1,800 titles today that talks about the region, from problem creation to problem and everything in between. Our mission remains to basically support Palestinian authors, Palestinian writers, promote Palestinian narrative and writing and literature, and also tell the history of the place, of Jerusalem, of Palestine, of the region as a whole. We have books basically our history, politics, to discuss issues like the legality, international law, UN resolutions, the wall.
Ahmed, are you there? It seems like your internet is at a low bandwidth. Are you connected?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but it's just a bit choppy. I don't know if there's anything to be done. We've been able to hear you this far, but the video is a little bit disjointed. If there's anything to be done, what can we do about the connection sometimes?
Can you hear me now? I've just
I think that's better, yeah.
Okay. I've tried to improve it. Let's see.
Okay.
Better. Thank you so much. So I think I was cut when I was talking about the collection of the books we have, right?
Yes, exactly.
Sure. So we also have books that are cooking books, language books, guidebooks, classics, also books that are make a good bookshop a good bookshop. We also sell best novels and bestsellers, Nobel Prize winners, and so on. So that is the collection of the shop. We also have in our second branch a coffee shop. We have a place for meetings. We hold events, book readings. We invite authors when there's a new book coming up. We invite authors to also do their book launches and book discussions in our bookshop. We like to think of our bookshop that is a place more than a bookshop. It's also a place where a discussion can take place, where a discourse can take place of a certain kind, where new books have new ideas, can also be born out of that bookshop, and basically we try to promote that as much as we can.
Incredible, and I can speak from experience that it's truly an incredible hub of community, culture, life, conversation, engagement in Jerusalem and in my personal world and in many worlds that surround me. So we're all endlessly thankful for the bookshop. I'm curious to ask before we move on to other themes, if you can share a little bit more also about the role it's played in your own personal life.
Yeah, of
How
course.
did you relate to it when you were younger? When did you start working at it? Did you always think to work with literature and books and in this world, or how has your own personal journey around the bookshop played out?
Thank you. It's a great personal question. Yes, I mean, the bookshop is older than me. I'm 34. The bookshop is 40 years old. I was not born in the bookshop, but not too far away from the shop. I have grown up into the bookshop. It's the time where I used to spend when I was a kid on holidays, on Sundays, when I'm off from school, on summer breaks. When I grew older, I kind of started to have new missions. We started to distribute papers, and I was a paper boy for a little while. And it kind of really, I grew up in the bookshop. It was for me the place to hang out, the place for socials. It's until today, it is the place that I meet my friends. Many of my friends, I actually meet them in the bookshop, because the bookshop is also a place where people come to connect. I have left at a certain point, even when I was in high school. Also, I used to work there in summer breaks, and then I left to study abroad. I went to study in England. I did both my bachelor and masters, and worked there for a couple of years. And I always come back in the summer holidays. So it was for us also as a family. The bookshop was a place that we also meet, and we don't meet at home necessarily or visit each other, but actually everybody meets in the bookshop. So it's also a place where some of the family conversations also happened. When I came back in 2015, after my graduation and after work, when I decided to come back home, it was basically an easy decision to come back and work in the bookshop. It didn't really take a lot of convincing. And I think the bookshop was growing at the time, and it needed more resources and people to work in, and I kind of stepped in, and I like it. I think in a bookshop also you get to meet people from all over the world, from the customers that come in. Of course, there are locals and expats and the internationals who live in the city, but also tourists, also people who come for groups, for tours, for educational tours. And it's always nice to meet these people. I mean, it's a nice working environment, because every day I meet someone new from a different part of the world. And I eventually made it my way up, and now today I run the flagship location in Salah ad-Din Street. And I really, really enjoy it. And I cannot think of the bookshop. I mean, I can't think of myself outside the bookshop. I very much like my shop. I feel a connection to the shop. It's a place where I've grown. It's a place that I've also seen prosper and flourish with time. I've seen more and more people, write about it, come to it. We also have a mission and a collection of books that's also unique, I think, and very niche in a way. So I think that all kind of makes it even more attractive for me. So I do very much enjoy being in the bookshop, and I see how it has also become, in a way, bigger than the Muna family. I think the bookshop today is surely we have a family connection to it. It's related to us because I'm part of the family, but I think it's also a place that many people can feel connected to, and this is what I love about it the most, actually.
Incredible. And it's been, of course, a joy for many of us to know you and the rest of the family over the years and engage in this way. But beyond that, as you're speaking to, it's a rare and very cherished space where a specific kind of border crossing solidarity community can come together. There are always diplomats, international visitors, local researchers, and scholars. There's a very rare kind of it's an address. It's a site that for a very rare kind of engagement that's so appreciated. Um,
Thank you.
and I guess that transitions us to talking from the general context to the development specifically of these last weeks, which is to say that on Sunday, February 9th, as many people here or everyone here is aware, the police raided the bookshop and arrested both yourself and your uncle and fellow bookseller Mahmoud. Could you please describe for people? I know many people here also have met you at different times, many have not. Also, specifically, I found that people in our audience from the United Kingdom who had met you during your studies reached out with concern or
Oh, wow.
text for any updates and developments over the last weeks. So I know there are many people here who have met you personally, but also many who have not and have followed developments through news and articles in the abstract, but people perhaps don't really have a sense of what occurred. So if you could describe what really did happen and how things developed, what was your experience of the raid, arrest, imprisonment, and release? Could share more.
Of course. Thank you again, Eris, for this question. And actually, I'm looking at the conversation and at the comments and at the people participants, and I do recognize many people, and from England and also from elsewhere, and from Slovenia, from America, and it's really amazing to see people coming together for this. It makes me puts even more trust in the community around the bookshop for me, which is really very valuable and very much appreciated, actually. So thanks a lot. So on 9th of February, which is actually 4 weeks ago today, it was a Sunday at 2:30. We have our two branches across the street from each other, the Arabic branch and the English branch, the branch that sells English books and the branch that sells Arabic books. We were surprised at 2:30 by four policemen undercover who walked in each of the shop and basically had a search warrant to search the place, to search the bookshop. They've taken my phone immediately. They have asked me to ask people to leave. I had customers in the shop, and very quickly, within minutes, basically the search started. They had a search warrant that basically said they're searching for books that have inciting content, inciting for violence against the state of Israel. I told them we don't have such books. I asked them if they're looking for specific books precisely. They refused to answer me. They told me very arrogantly they know better how to find what they're looking for. And basically they started the search. The search was more like messing up the shop, vandalizing the shop. They didn't speak any Arabic and English. We sell books in Arabic and English. They only speak Hebrew. So very quickly also they picked up their phones and they started to take photos of covers of the book, or open Google Translate and start to translate the titles of the books. That also didn't work very well because some books are written in such a way, the graffiti and the design, and especially in Arabic, did not really, Google could not even grasp that. So then the judgment and the decision to which books they think is inciting then became according to the cover of the book. And you know, we as people who work in the bookshop, we say never judge a book by its cover, but that's exactly what they were doing, judging books by its covers. Eventually, the books that were taken or put aside for interest to take were books that had the word Palestine on them, where that had a flag, a Palestinian flag, a picture of a prisoner, a picture of a child being arrested, a picture of a wall, and so on and so forth. In terms of design, books that had on the cover the map of Israel or the map of Palestine as a whole. And eventually, the books that they did not want or not interested in, basically they start to chunk them on the floor. So they'll pick a pile from the shelf, books they're interested, they'll put them aside, they're not interested, they'll chuck them on the floor. Also then, you know, half an hour later, the bookshop became a mess. Many books were on the floor. They started to step on books. I tried to tell them I tried to interfere to put things in order. I mean, put books back in the shelf, books that were on the floor, to move them aside so they don't step on books. This bookshop is 40 years old. I'm a third generation to running this bookshop. I just explained to you my personal connection to all of this. And for me, it really is heartbreaking to see books being treated that way. And then to bring rubbish bags and also put books that they wanted to confiscate in rubbish bags was also even more humiliating. We offered to give boxes to put the books in. They refused. I tried to put things in order. I tried to put books back on the shelves, to organize them. They kept pushing me away, telling me not to interfere. I should stand in the corner. I'm not allowed to touch anything. So that happened a lot of times. And at some point, it even got physical. You know, they physically pushed me back and asked me not to interfere. It was not pleasant at all. And it was a very long process of seeing your bookshop being damaged in front of your eyes, where you can do nothing about it. I then, 2 hours later, in total, that was 2 hours in both shops, they gathered about 300 copies, 300 books, and these books then were put in plastic bags, as I explained, and taken to a van. The van they had outside is also an undercover, not a police car. And we were told at that moment that Mahmoud and I, will have to accompany them to the police station. We were also then put in the cars and taken to the police station in Jaffa Gate, just inside the old city. There, we got into a room that looked like a meeting room, a big room that had a meeting table in the middle. It looked like someone just had a meeting before coming to raid us. And there we started to see also the books coming out of the car, being put on the table. Then we were put on two corners further away from each other in that room, and we were put facing the walls. We could not speak. We were told not to speak to each other. We then were started to be treated even more aggressively, being pushed, being shouted at. If you try and like move your head to try and see what's happening around you, you'll be shouted at to look at the wall. Literally, you're in the corner. It was cold. It even was sitting outside at some point, and it was raining. And then we could see the movement that books are being put on the table. Some other people came to the room. We couldn't identify them as we were looking at the wall, but we understood that there's a conversation happening about the books. Should these books be taken? Should be searched? And so on and so forth. Eventually, maybe an hour later, many people came in and out and books were put on the table and so on. We were asked to go to another part, were accompanied or taken to another part of the building for interrogation. As I was leaving the room, I did see many of the books again on the floor, the books that they were just confiscated, scattered on the floor. They were debating. Some of the police officers were upset that these books are not going to be like confiscated for some reason, or not going to be searched fairly. So we're complaining to each other about it. We were taken to another part of the building for interrogation. Separately, both of us were interrogated for about 15 minutes. The questions were not about the books at all and not about the content. It was, in my opinion, was very generic and silly questions. Questions like, I remember the first question was, so Ahmed, tell me more about yourself. How long have you worked in the bookshop? What are the opening hours? Who works in the bookshop? Do you get a salary? Do you sell books like with taxes and you issue invoices and so on? These kind of questions. If the registration profile of the bookshop and how it's registered and so on. But basically, questions that are very technical and not related to the books. I was also told at that point that I'm being interrogated with on the suspicion of disturbing public order. Although the court decision that was given to me in the shop was basically searching the shop for inciting content, for incitement, whereas when we were taken to the police station, we were interrogated with on disturbing public order. And I want to just mention something here. We didn't know at the time, but later, the next day in court, we understood that for the police to basically arrest people on incitement, they have to have a proof that they put in front of the general prosecutor, and the general prosecutor then has to agree and approve a search warrant, and then a search warrant is issued, and people could be then arrested, following that process. But actually, the police did not act according to the law because they didn't have a general prosecutor agreement before coming to raid us. They only had a judge approve a search warrant, and the search warrant was approved by a judge basically without a general prosecutor agreement. So the whole basis of them coming to the bookshop with that search is actually not they didn't follow the legal procedure to do so. Yet they were able to do that because they had a judge who could sign on that warrant. Then they arrested us based on disturbing public order, which is a catch-all phrase that's used here. You don't need a court. You don't need a judge. As a police officer, you can at any time in the street arrest someone for 24 hours on disturbing public order. So it's like a catch-all phrase to get people inside for interrogations. That was the first twist in terms of we being taken for something. And the search was about the books and the bookshop. And then immediately when we were inside the interrogation, became against Ahmad and Mahmoud that we're disturbing public orders. And we were not asked anything about the books. This was 15 minutes each. Then we were taken back to that meeting room and we were told that we're going to stay the night in prison, in custody. There's another funny thing that happened, but it's also very sad. We were separated at that moment. Mahmoud was taken to the Russian compound. I was kept at the police station in a holding cell. The reason they said they're separating us because there's no enough space in the Russian compound prison. which is funny in a way. The hotel was fully booked. There's only one space for one person in it, i.e., the prison here. But it also very sad because it makes me think how much the prisons are full, which means how many people have been arrested, and there's not enough space for in prisons, basically, in general. We were treated like criminals from the first moment. Once we were in that meeting room, then it was obvious to them that they're treating us like criminals, handcuffed, shackles at feet, and then further, more aggressiveness, pushing further, even talking down at you, some swearing words are being used. You're also physically, when they drag you and you're handcuffed, you can't move so easily and so quickly. And then they want to move quick, so they start dragging you, and then you start to hurt yourself. But from that moment, from then we started to see this kind of treatment getting basically worse and worse. We spent the night in custody. The next morning, we went to court. That was the first time I saw Mahmoud again after 20 hours, maybe a bit less than 20 hours. And then in the court, it was such a relief to see so many people. We were disconnected for a very long time. Our phones were taken away from us. We were stripped from everything we can have. We spent the night in custody for the first time ever in a cell that was, for me, I was alone. I was left in a solitary cell by myself. The toilet is inside that cell. It's very small. It was very cold, no windows, no time, no clock, no watch, no pillows, no covers. I mean, the cover is so thin that it doesn't cover all of your body. We sleep in a concrete bed made of concrete and iron. It was also very cold with this much thin yoga style mat. So, I mean, there's nothing in there to do but to sleep, but you can't actually sleep also. The light was on all night, so it was on actually 24 hours all the time I was in there. There was a toilet in the cell, but had no ceiling, no door. It was like kind of open toilet and open toilet seat. No toilet paper and no soap to wash your hands. I was not given any food up until after the court on the second day. So for about 24 hours, I wasn't given any food. And I asked for water at some point, and it arrived maybe an hour later. They told me, yeah, okay, we'll get you some water, but that took forever. The next day at court, that's when I saw Mahmoud. The prosecutor, the police asked for 8 days to extend our stay for 8 days, or custody for 8 days. They claim they still have 8 books. Maybe I've missed something. They've actually returned a lot of the books on that same night. Before they took us to custody, they called one of our family members who came to collect the books. So a lot of the books that they took, maybe 80–90% of them were given back to us. We estimated that they took about 300 copies of books. We were told that they still have 8 titles that they're investigating. I don't know if I'm mentioning too much details. I don't know if I should go faster a little bit, but I'll try and see.
This is the context and information people want. I mean, I'm curious, what are those 8 titles, if you know and want to share? Curious.
So we were also given a list of the books that they took of these titles later. But that list actually had a description of the title, but not the titles. So it said basically it said 1 copy of a green book with a picture, with a cover, with a picture of the map in the Arabic language. 2 books, big, with a color blue. I'm just giving you an idea of how the description is. In the Arabic language, with the picture of a village on the cover. And then like 9 books of a book of many colors in the language, in the English language. So these are the descriptions of the book. Now we can guess what the books are because we know the books, we know how they look like. When they say it's in Arabic and English, we can start to guess, but we didn't figure out all of the 8 books because the description is so obscure. You can't even like it's one book with a brown cover and writings in red in English. It could be, 4, 5, 7 options if you want to go scan. But also, I mean, it gives you an idea. Maybe I also forgot to mention the people who came to raid the shop were actually Hebrew speakers, and the books that we sell are in Arabic and in English. So they were using Google Translate. I think I did mention that. So for them also reading these books and knowing the title of these books was not possible. So they had to write the descriptions of the books. They couldn't tell us what the books are. But with this description, also we can't know what these books are. What I know that they took Walid Khalidi's All That Remains, for example, which is a book on all the destroyed villages of 1948. Jeff Halper, a new book on one state solution. It had a big picture of the map. And it said decolonizing Israel, liberating Palestine. They took a coloring book that they then took to court and went to social media with, which is a coloring book they took from our warehouse. We in our Arabic branch shop in the back, we have a small storage room. That's where we keep books for review. So somebody comes and they say, okay, I have this new book. It's just been published. I think you should have it. It's a great book. We don't just order 20 copies of that book. We actually put it on a review shelf. Somebody picks it up from the shop. Then somebody else picks it up. If we think it's interesting, we pass it on to someone else. And then if 2 or 3 people agree that it's a good book, we should have it, then we order the book. This book had been there for a couple of weeks. And then nobody really went through it. I can't even tell you what's inside the book. I've seen later photos of what's inside the book, and it's basically pictures of Jerusalem, pictures and drawings, basically for kids to color. It's a coloring book. The title of the book is From the River to the Sea. Inside there's Palestinian, authors, Palestinian poets like Mahmoud Darwish, Edward Said, these kind of Palestinian figures, basically. And the title of the book is From the River to the Sea. This was the biggest trigger for the police officers to take it. So this is the collection of the books, the ones I can remember. There's another book from the first Intifada from 20 years ago called People. The title of the book, People Called Palestine, but actually the picture on the cover is a child carrying the photo of his father, who is a martyr. So he's carrying the photo of his father, and both of them are on the cover of the book. We believe that's the reason the book was taken, not because of its title, not because of its content. Yeah. It's actually a 20-year-old book that has been in the bookshop forever. In the court, they asked for our detention for 8 more days, saying that they have a lot of evidence, but they can't release it. They have to look further into it before they can provide any evidence. And they're building a case, blah, blah, blah. They made a big deal in front of the judge that they have a big case here, and it's all secretive, and they can't answer a lot of questions. And our lawyer asked for our immediate release. So a lot of back and forth for 45 minutes. Eventually, the judge extended our stay for 1 more night and gave us 5 more days of house arrest. Our lawyer appealed that, so we were taken to an appeal court 2-3 hours later in the afternoon to appeal that decision. The judge in the appeal court refused the appeal, despite my convention that he was actually convinced that we shouldn't be there, and he did tell the police that they have acted against the law without arresting people and confiscated books without the general prosecutor's agreement and approval, and they haven't done their jobs correctly. Yet, and this is where I also start to question the just system in all of this. In the court, and if the judge have made the decision based on facts and justice and fairness, or if he just made it to save face in a way. Because he did say that to the police, but he also said to our lawyer, look, this only happened 24 hours ago. The police say they have evidence, they're working on it. By tomorrow morning, they will have something. So let's give them a chance. Maybe they'll come up with something the next morning. And it's okay, it's 1 more day. People can stay in 1 more day. These 2 guys can stay 1 more day. And we will see what the police has to say tomorrow morning. So for me, this was not a a decision, hearing these words doesn't really indicate to me that this decision is made based on justice or fairness or any sort of, taking a judge supposed to implement justice, not to give a chance to someone to prove something or more time. Anyway, we went back to custody with these horrible conditions again. Mahmoud and I were separate again. He spent the night in the Russian compound, which is 2 nights in the Russian compound, which is basically a prison in Jerusalem called the Russian compound because it used to be a Russian compound back in the day. Now it's turned into a prison. And the next morning, again, I spent the next night alone by myself in a solitary small cell, in a holding cell at a police station, Mahmoud in the Russian quarter compound. And the next morning, a police comes to my cell and tells me, was actually with all this treatment of bad treatment and pushing and harassing, and I mean, at some point we were even strip searched, from top to toe. Even my hair they went through. We were striped off even our underwears and searched thoroughly. Body-wise, I mean, there was a lot of humiliation in terms of treatment. We were treated, as I told you, as criminals, pushed around, even blindfolded at some points, put in a police trucks for the ones that you take basically criminals, and so you're not treated as free until proven you're a criminal. You're treated as a criminal, and then you have the next 48 hours or 24 hours to prove otherwise. So out of a sudden, the next morning, the treatment was just so much nicer. This policeman came to my cell and he was like, "How was your night? Sorry, how was your night? Did you sleep well? Did you use the toilet? Did you have a shower?" And I was like, "No, I didn't have a shower. Didn't know I was supposed to have a shower." And then he asked me if I had food, and I told him I've only had a sandwich yesterday. But he could see the rest of it on the bed actually where I was sleeping. He was like, "Yeah, but you didn't finish." I was like, "Yeah, because it's not. I don't like it actually, because also you kind of get the leftovers in a way. The quality of the food, it's very minimum, but it's also the quality is not anything anybody dreams of." And then he was like, "Oh, we'll get you something else." Like he was really exceptionally nice, and I was like, "What's going on?" Like we have a court here at 10 o'clock. We're supposed to have this from yesterday. They told us at 10 o'clock we have to go to court again. And I was like, "Okay, look, it's 8:30 in the morning. We're happy to release you on conditions, and there's no need to go to court." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Okay, you can call somebody from your family or your lawyer to come and basically sign the papers." So we did call someone at that point, my uncle. Then maybe 30, 40 minutes later, he came, or he was there. I was taken to an office. And in the office, basically, there was the release papers. We were released on bail, both of us. The release bail was that we have to pay a release fee. We have to put a guarantee for the bail, so money down for both of us. We had to basically sign on papers that we're going to house arrest for 5 days. We're not going to talk to each other for 10 days. And we are going to be away from the shop for 20 days. So from 20 days from our release, we're not allowed back in the shops. 10 days, we're not allowed to talk to each other, and 5 days in home arrest. And that the file or the folder or the investigation is still open. And we basically that we can be called at any time. Of course, you want to leave that place. I also don't think the 5 days of house arrest was necessary. I don't think 20 days being away from the shop has any point whatsoever. But that basically was the agreement or the release conditions. And because you don't want to spend any more time in there, you do sign them. Although I don't think it's fair. I mean, at the end of the day, there was no crime. If the books were the issue, then most of the books have been returned. The bookshop remained open at all times, so it's surely not a problem with the bookshop. We were taken out, one day before the court, and then the court extended our stay for one more day. But after that, I mean, We also were released. So what is the crime? I don't know. Why am I being punished? I also don't know. I was punished for 2 nights in custody and 5 days of house arrest and 20 days not being in the shop for no crime. And basically, this is how it came to an end.
Yeah, I read in an article that, of course, in the end, you ended up, as I understand it, being charged for disturbing public order or disturbing the peace. And I read in an article that a police officer was testifying and asked, how were they disturbing the peace or disturbing public order? And the officer responded, selling books, period, end. Was it really that clear? Is that really what was said in the courtroom?
No,
Okay.
no, no. I'm actually, I haven't, I mean, I'm only hearing this now that somebody explicitly said selling books is the crime. But yeah, of course, selling books is not a crime, surely. But it was never said to us what is the public order that we are disturbing. Even that question was never answered. A lot of the questions in the courtroom were not answered by the prosecutor because they kept saying, this is secretive, we're working on documents, we're translating, we have books in Arabic, we have books in English, we can't release information, this is a high sensitive case. And they kept saying this over and over again. They're basically kind of running away from answering questions. Aaron, yes, Orwellian, very much. I mean, it's actually, I've been using this word when describing this. I think it's very Orwellian. It's just the whole process of, coming after you, looking for you, criminalizing you for not committing a crime, but you're being treated as a criminal. I think it was very Orwellian, indeed.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many different conversations to tease out from what you're sharing. Of course, there's a larger conversation to be had about the conditions in prisons and incarceration. This is a conversation playing out all over the world, and of course, specifically in regards to Palestinians in various legal contexts under Israeli rule, and in the context of growing repression. Seems like you want to say something in response.
I think, this is what it is. It's a crack on freedom of speech or freedom of expression. Books are basically tools to political change, to social change. Books are ideas, they are thoughts, they are basically knowledge that can then open people's mind, introduce new ideas, challenge old ideas. It can be a road to a solution, it can be a path to somewhere, and it opens people's mind. And the moment you start to crack down on these kind of issues and basically stop people from having the freedom of thinking and the freedom of speech and expression, what are you trying to do to the society? I mean, you're starting to basically, what kind of society do you dream of, or you think of you're producing when you're basically limiting people's mind expansion and thinking outside the box and being introduced to new ideas? I think it can only lead to radicalism.
Yeah, I mean, I think this speaks really to the larger question of this moment and that comes out of this incident and out of all your sharing, which is what is the larger intent here and what is the broader political and historical context that underlies this in this moment. And of course, it's inevitably the case that you and I and any of us, we don't actually know what the stratagems or thinking or minds and hearts of the occupation authorities are. But I guess I wanted to ask if you, coming through this process, have any thoughts about what was the function of the raid? Why would Israeli authorities target a bookshop, booksellers, books, and what about books, literature, discourse, and community that the bookshop makes possible is threatening to occupation authorities to the point that they would act to suppress you and the shop and books in this way?
It's a good question, and it's not so easy to answer. I'll tell you why. We were never told the reason of why the bookshop was raided. We never were told why there's a search. And it's often the case with the police. They don't explain to you why they're doing this, at least in this part of the world. So I don't know for sure what triggered this search, but I can tell you that I'll tell you two things. That in a week before our raid, there was another bookshop that was raided in the old city, and it was closed down. And there was a book found on a book that is a novel, actually, written by Sinwar, Yahya Sinwar. And that also triggered the arrest of that man and then the closure of his bookshop, and he was actually arrested for 8 or 9 days. I don't know if that was a trigger before then the police decided to search all bookshops. And I'm not too sure it is the reason, because then I haven't heard of any bookshop after us that have been raided. But it could be why, or it could be the trigger. But I think the question is much broader than this, and the answer should be much broader. I think, and maybe I'll link back to what I said a little bit before. I think in the last couple of years, 3 years, we are living in a place in the state of Israel. I mean, here in East Jerusalem, we're under Israeli control, and the way the state of Israel have been operating in the last couple of years, it has become more and more Orwellian. It has become more and more radical. It has become more and more right wing. It is run. We have people in the government who basically don't believe that the Palestinian people exist. They believe in the annexation of all of the West Bank, of expanding. There is a lot of arrogance when it comes to deal with the Palestinians, and I think it's one more thing, when, as you mentioned earlier, that theaters get closed down and actors get arrested and singers get arrested and comedians get arrested and schools get raided and school curriculums and books are being confiscated from schools and then university students being arrested and put in prison. I think it becomes at no surprise that with the continuation of this right-wing radical government and politicians, there are further and further limitations of limitations of freedom of movement, surely limitations on the freedom of thinking, of expression, but not only on these freedoms, but also this is accompanied by an attack over Palestinian identities, over the Palestinian culture, over the Palestinian narrative. I mean, as I was mentioning earlier, what books do? Books are supposed to be the light, to be the knowledge. They introduce you to new things. They can tell a people's history, tell a people's narrative, tells a people's story, and this is what we also sell in the bookshop. We sell biographies and fictions and novels and that are inspired by the reality here. And it's a tool. It's a tool for a change. And I think going after a bookshop is basically you want to not have that narrative. You want to erase that narrative. You don't want people to celebrate their culture, to celebrate their identity, to celebrate their heritage. And it's one way to shut it down is to actually shut a bookshop and to go to schools and universities and to limit people's ways of expressing culture and traditions, and whether it's a play or music or comedy show.
Yes, beautifully articulated and poignant. And I think building on what you said, Ahmad, and as we work to understand the raid on the bookshop in a broader political context, I do want to take one moment to highlight the ways that the seizure and confiscation of Palestinian books, scholarship, texts, and literature has been a part of Israeli state policy since its founding, actually, in 1948. And I wanted to show just a quick minute or two of a very enlightening and powerful documentary called The Great Book Robbery. So just one moment while I share my screen.
This is your brain when you're struggling to focus. And this is your brain when you're in the zone. But getting in the
Yes, of course. I have maybe a part of the looting. Yeah. I was one of the looters.
After 1946, when the King David Hotel was blown up by Jewish terrorists, our area was targeted. As Qatamon, Talbiya, all the Baqa, all these areas in the west became increasingly threatened. The thing I really picked up and that affected me was that my parents became more and more troubled and more frightened. And as we came into early 1948, that feeling of danger in the air, of fear, intensified.
המסמך הראשון שמצאתי היה איזשהו מכתב מאוד קצר מיוני 48, שבו אחד הספרנים כותב למנהל הספרייה על מצב הספרייה במהלך המלחמה, והמשפט האחרון באותו מסמך היה: באיסוף הספרים אצלנו הגענו אתמול לשכונת מוסררה. בתוך שבועיים או שלושה מצאתי דוקומנטים נוספים בעניין הזה, ואני זוכר שהרגע שבו הבנתי שיש כאן משהו שהוא בעל משמעות, זו הייתה כשנתקלתי במקרה במאמר של תום שגב, ושם הוא מצטט שר בממשלה שמדבר על הביזה הכללית, בתוך כך מזכיר את העובדה שהאוניברסיטה ארגנה ועדה מטעמה שהולכת בעקבות אנשי הצבא ואוספת ספרים מהבתים הנטושים בירושלים.
We left our houses, we left everything. Most of the furniture was stolen. Most of the books, private books of I'm talking about were stolen. But this is nothing compared with the treasures of literature which was stolen from the house of my uncle, Ishaq Natsashibi, which was unique. It was known for its wealth in the rare copies of manuscripts of the Quran or of the Hadith. What happens with his books?
Thank you for allowing me to do that. And I wanted to show it to everyone because I think this helps us. And I do recommend, of course, people find the documentary. It's on YouTube and watch the rest. It's very enlightening and gives the historical context that I think is helpful because it helps us to understand the ways that the seizure, confiscation, and expropriation of books is inherently connected, I feel, to the seizure, confiscation, and expropriation of Palestinian land and the ways that the raid of the bookshop must be understood within the larger context of the occupation. And to drive this point home and articulate, I think actually far more eloquently than I ever could, the connection between literature and land also, I want to show just one more quick video of a very short part of a lecture delivered by known and beloved Palestinian poet Rifat El-Obeid. One moment while I share.
If you've ever been to Jerusalem. Like we have 60 students here, we have 1, 2, probably 3. That's very few of you. I've never been to Jerusalem. We're Palestinians, we're living in Gaza, we can't go to Jerusalem because of the Israeli occupation. But we love Jerusalem, right? We love Jerusalem because of what it means to us. We've never been there. But believe me, when you go there, you will feel that you've been there hundreds of times because you read about Jerusalem in literature, in story. It doesn't mean that khalas, we should take Jerusalem in the poem or in the story and that's it. No. But in literature, Jerusalem is back to us, comes back to us. So it's true that there is suffering, there is pain, there's occupation, and that's why Tamim al-Barghouti, as a Palestinian poet, as a young Palestinian poet, I think is doing a great service to the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian struggle. When you read Tamim or you listen to him reciting his poem, Fil-Quds or other poems, he brings you a lot, he takes you to Jerusalem. You live Jerusalem. He takes you back to it. You liberate it for just a little bit of time. And if there is hope, if you can imagine a free Palestine, free Jerusalem, probably you will work towards that. And the same thing applies to occupied Palestine. We've never been to other parts of Palestine because of the Israeli occupation, but we've been told so many times by our parents and grandparents, especially our mothers. They've been telling us stories about Palestine, Yamli Blad in the past, the good old days, how Palestine was, all nice and beautiful, unoccupied, unraped. And therefore, I say, in this case, how our homeland turns into a story. In reality, we can't have it. We don't have it. But it can turn into poems, into poetry, into literature, into stories. So our homeland turns into a story. We love our homeland because of the story. We love our homeland because of the story. And we love the story because it's about our homeland. And this connection is significant. Israel wants to sever this relationship, for example, between Palestinians and land, Palestinian and Jerusalem and other places and cities. And literature attaches us back, connects us strongly to Palestine. So in my imagination, in my thinking actually, this is a very significant thing that literature contributes to, creating realities, making the impossible sound possible.
As Professor Al-Saraya highlighted so beautifully just now, occupation authorities want to sever the historical relationship between Palestinians and Jerusalem, between refugees and their homes, and where state violence works to dismember this relationship, literature helps to remember it, to imagine a future of justice, equality, and return beyond ongoing displacement. And that's why, in a sense, I think we have to understand the raid, Ahmed, on the bookshop as a raid on the imagination and speak out against the raid on the bookshop and in solidarity with you and your family, both as citizens of the US, UK, EU, and countries everywhere that are backing and funding this violence, but moreover, as part of a global community invested in a vision and imagination of the future grounded in justice and universal human rights. So in that spirit, Ahmad, I actually asked everyone to come today to the webinar with a book that they either purchased from the bookshop, is critical of the occupation, or expresses Palestinian identity in some way. Understandably and inevitably, many people may have missed the request I sent in the confirmation email. So if that's the case, everyone can also instead write the name of a Palestinian book in the chat that in some way influenced you. But for those who did see my request, please lift the book you brought to the webinar to your screen for just a second or a few moments in a gesture of solidarity with the Muna family, with Ahmed, and with Palestinian cultural workers everywhere that help us to imagine a just future.
I see so many wonderful books.
Good.
Wow. Thank you guys for the support.
And I guess I want to
speak Arabic. Wow. Ethnic cleansing, righteous victims. A Day in the Life of Abd Salam is a great book, actually, Marina. Thank you. And I see so many familiar faces too, and many friends from Germany, from Italy. I'm really, really very grateful for your connection.
We're thankful for your taking the time. We're thankful to be all together today. And I guess in that vein, because we are unfortunately running out of time, the time has flown by, of course. I wanted to end by asking you to share, of course, any final thoughts, but also about, I've heard both of you and Mahmoud talk about the local and global solidarity you've experienced, and I'm curious if you want to share more about after you were released, or during and after, how you've experienced the communities around you being present and rallying around in many different ways, and what that's been like.
Of course. Thank you again. Thank you for showing these powerful videos, actually, too. I think it's also very important, and it puts things even more in context. I'm muting myself, sure. Yes, I mean, I've coming out of this experience, there's a couple of things that I kind of root back to and make sure that I mention every time I'm asked. One is I spoke about, which is the conditions inside the prison, and it makes me wonder how many innocent people actually have to go through that process. And it leads to my second point, which is the international solidarity that we have seen coming our way, actually. And we're in a way lucky, privileged, somehow. But Mahmoud and I have made friends over the years, and I think the bookshop itself have made friends, and they had a good community around it. That when I spent 20 hours in custody and I was disconnected from the work and from the world, and I felt I was just being abandoned by the whole world inside in this very dark cell. And then to come out and see in the courtroom and see so many people, I think somebody asked in the questions, did diplomats come? I did see diplomats, I see journalists, I saw photographers, I saw friends, I saw people who I've met, 2-3 years ago. I've seen people that I've not spoken to in years actually show up in my courtroom. Of course, family, lawyers, actually, there are a couple of lawyers who voluntarily came to the court, and they basically were asking our lawyer if he needs any help, and they wanted to support. And I think it kind of gives you a flash. It's a light in your face. I was positively shocked. It was overwhelming to see the amount of people who actually showed up at court initially, because we didn't know the size of this case. We thought, this is Ahmad and Mahmoud are being arrested, we're being put in prison. God knows, at the moment you start to think, God knows when you're going to be released. And then out of a sudden, the next day, you see how many people around you have gathered, the community, the friends, just all of this really makes a huge difference. It's very uplifting. It lightens in your heart, and it makes you trust the community. Not like I've lost my trust to the community, but it does really reinstate something about the bookshop, about the good heart, the people with good hearts, with good intentions, people who refuse injustice, people who stand for freedom of speech, stand for our bookshop, for what we sell, for what we have, for the place that we've created, for the discussion and the discourse that the bookshop offers. As I said, it's like a cultural place. It's not only a bookshop. And I think all of this together, and then leaving then a day later and seeing all the mountains and mountains of messages and emails and solidarity and people who called, I can't thank people enough. I can't say enough thank yous to all of those who came all around us and were part of that community. And I don't think without them, this would have been much harder. So I also want to take this chance to thank everybody who has been there, everybody who made this seminar, everybody who came to the webinar, for you, Erez, also for organizing this. And if I may just also end by saying that we're talking about all of this, but it's not yet over. I know, and perhaps I didn't really want to end on this note, but I also want to kind of keep this transparent. We have not. We were told when we left, the file is still open. We have not been told that the file is closed. We were told that we may be called for further questions. So the 20 days have finished. We are back in the bookshop. We're back to our jobs for the last 5 days. But this didn't mean that we could. They still have books. We haven't got all our books back, and we could be called back for questions. For I don't know what. I don't know what's going to happen next. Because nothing surprises me anymore. I would be surprised because there is no case here. There's actually no case of inciting. We know the books that we sell. They're all published by worldwide publishing houses, and when we trust that they're clear enough that there's nothing we shouldn't be selling in there. But also nothing really surprises me about the place that we live in. That anything can happen, and you can be very quickly, within minutes, taken into custody and then being put in a dungeon underground within 30 minutes and striped away from all your rights. And that also leads me, one of my final points, if you allow me, Erez, to share. Because of all these costs that we have to incur because of this process, we have legal fees to pay, we have release fees, we have court fees. We still have ongoing team of lawyers who are actually looking into this and how they're going to close this file for us. We've had visits by right-wing radicals actually who came to the shop a few days after the release and were upset about our release and about the bookshop. And they came with Israeli flags, which basically driven us now to think of ways to further secure our shop in terms of cameras and security systems and fire alarms. We have a number of books that were damaged. So actually, a publisher friend of us, also from the book industry, have helped us or created a crowdfunding campaign for us, which we have been trying to basically share. So if it's okay, I'm going to share it here in the chat. And I hope that you can guys contribute, circulate, put it where you think it's possible, because we actually are having a lot of cost that being imposed on us that we also have to cover. And we thank you for everything you can contribute to, or you can circulate or send it to others. We really would appreciate that so much. And I really, really hope the next time I'll speak to you, it will be on a more nice things, on fiction, on Palestine, on the new sci-fi, on the new book that is a new novel about romance, and not about occupation.
Inshallah, we can't wait for those events. And we know there's many good days to come, but we do want to really, really thank you, Ahmad. And of course, we know the story isn't finished, so I hope, and I know that I'm speaking for everyone here right now and saying, please do reach out to your community. We're around the world. If anything should come up, we're here. Let us know, and we'll follow the bookshop also online for updates and if there's ways to be present and support and solidarity. Of course, people should also visit the bookshop in person. Order books online is a wonderful way to support and also advance the general cause of Palestinian literature and scholarship, to engage with the content and imagination that the occupation authorities are trying to shut down. And with that, unfortunately, I think we have to draw to an end. It feels like barely enough time, but Ahmed, thank you for joining us during this tumultuous time. Do you have any final word?
Yeah, I just want to tell everybody I did share my email in the chat. I shared the website of the bookshop, and I also shared the crowdfunding campaign. So if you want to find these links, you can find them right now in the chat. Thank you. And thank you, Erez. Again, I really, really very much appreciate this chance and this webinar and your time, and Green Olive Tours. Keep up the good work. And thank you so much for being part of this community and for being friends of the bookshop. And I'm really grateful for this. Thank you.
Thanks in return, and the least we can do for all you've made possible. with the bookshop and personally. And thanks to each and every one of you here also from around the world on behalf of Green Olive Collective, and I'm sure on behalf of the Educational Bookshop, for joining this event from around the world and everywhere you are. As I mentioned at the start of our time, you can also contribute for today's event at the Green Olive Fund, and today's contributions will be split between the Green Olive Collective and the Educational Bookshop, as discussed in advance, of course, with Ahmad, to help cover legal fees and restock books, and also to contribute to agricultural projects in the West Bank. And both of our work challenging censorship, occupation, and escalating political repression, as I have tried to, of course, make clear in the last months and the last period. I want to end just by saying that we're very proud to continue highlighting voices like Ahmad's and voices of other Jewish and Palestinian human rights defenders, insisting that only freedom, equality, and an end to the ongoing Nakba can bring a future of dignity for all. And if you want to come and meet Ahmad and visit the bookshop in person, the Green Olive Collective is hosting 3 solidarity missions in 2025, advancing solidarity across borders and a democratic future. Anyone who wishes to join is more than welcome. We can sit together in the bookshop, along with meeting with activists and participating in activities in the Nakba, Bethlehem, Al-Saraya, and elsewhere. You can find more information at greenolivetours.com. And we hope everyone here has good and peaceful days. We will send a recording of this event tomorrow, and hope everyone here has a lovely, lovely rest of the day. We will see everyone soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.